You thought we were going to talk about e-collars, didn't you? Nah, we're going to talk about slap mills.
So this is called a slap mill, and if you can believe it, it is one of the more controversial pieces of equipment in dog training. It's hated by people on both the force-free side as well as the balance traders side, but usually it's only hated by people who don't know what it is, and I'm going to teach that to you today. If this is our first time meeting, my name's Pat Stewart, I'm a dog trainer, and mostly what I do is educate other dog trainers through a variety of videos and all kinds of stuff. If you want to learn more from me, there's links in the description. Okay, so what is a slap mill? The history of a slap mill is, well, I don't know the full history of it, but I can tell you that it has a lot of historical connotations with dog fighting. And so that's one of the reasons why many people who actually know what this is and how to use it still have issues with the slap mill. But one of the main reasons why using one of these will get you cancelled on the internet is, as you just saw, when you put a dog on this and it runs full clip, it can upset a lot of people for a couple of reasons. But the main one is they think that the dog is being forced to do that. And as you can see, although this model has a motor on it, and we'll talk about why that's there and what that does, when you see a dog on a slap mill running as fast as that, that dog is choosing to run that fast. A dog on the slap mill can go as fast or as slow or not run at all if it wants to, because it's a dog-powered belt. It's just a frame with a belt that goes around it, ball bearings all over it, slats across that, which is why it's called a slap mill. And you clip the dog up so that they're restrained by their collar or a harness, whatever it is. And in the dog's attempt to go forward, the belt just turns underneath them and the dog can go as fast or as slow as it wants. One of the crazy things about using a slap mill, and what can really upset a lot of the public and the sort of non-dog educated people, or the new people to the dog space, which is sort of my specialty in teaching those people. If you want to learn more, jump into the description, there's links there. But very few people have ever seen a dog fully express itself. Very few people have ever seen a dog go full power at anything that they do, because nobody really gives the dog the time and space to do that. The slap mill allows for that. When you've introduced the dog to one of these properly, and it's actually really easy to do to get most dogs onto here and get them pretty comfortable. If you do it as a puppy, it's very easy. You just put a puppy on there, they're ignorant to knowing what it is. We don't let them do a lot of work on it, but we introduce the idea that the floor can move underneath you. They're fine with it their whole lives. And older dogs, as we introduce it slowly, there's a bit of a technique for that. If that's something you're interested in, again, it's something I can teach you, jump into the description. That slow introduction allows for the dog to learn, oh, this is safe, I can walk, I can run. And then when a dog realizes, oh my God, I can go full steam, I can run as fast as I want for as long as I want, very often a huge shift happens in that dog's mind, and they just open up and really fully express themselves. And as I said, not too many people ever get to see a dog really do that. Give as much power as it wants to for whatever it wants to do, for as long as it wants to do it. And that's the power of the slap mill. So, as I sort of alluded to, the history of the slap mill it has a lot of negative connotations, because in the past, for people who were trying to condition a dog to go into dog fighting, would often use slap mills, because the kind of dogs that you can't take out into public because they're too dangerous, they're a headache or whatever, or if you're discreet about what you do, keep one of these in the basement. You can keep a dog super fit and in really good condition discreetly. And so for many people in the dog space that know what this is and are okay with the use of it, they're like, no, that's totally fine. I know the dog's running at its own pace. They love it, and it's actually really good for a dog. It sort of triggers something in many people to make them think, oh, but that has a dog fighting history. That's a dog fighting tool. And of course, people can use tools for whatever they do, but we use it for many, many things beyond just conditioning a dog. So let's talk about that first, because it's the most obvious thing that people will do with this, is that it just gives the dog the ability to run as fast as they want for as long as they want. You can wind on resistance to certain models of these, and so you can make it kind of hard for the dog to do it, so that they're having to dig in and use more muscle, so it becomes more resistance training rather than just the cardio of running. And certain models you can put on an incline or a decline to make it harder or not. So for sure, you can make a dog really fit on one of these, but we use it for much more than that, in that it's an incredible conditioning tool that I used to use mine all the time. I've had this one about 8 years, but I used to use mine all the time before I had this training space to work with him. When I was training a lot of dogs in a much smaller space, like in my garage, you can use this for a lot of different things where you want the dog to be able to run and feel expressive. I've even gone as far as like having a dog walking along on here in sort of a heel position to work on eye contact and whether we were dog looking at me, looking away, you know, the difference between what would be a focused heel or like a contact heel walk type thing that you'd use in Mondio. You can do stuff like that. I'll use mine as a position box as well because we get the dog in here, they're facing one way. I can put my manners minder or treat and train in here and I can teach the dog my sit down stand in a way where the dog is contained. Another cool things is you can teach a dog to walk backwards. One of the things that when you teach your dog to walk backwards, they often end up sort of kinked in the way that they do that. By teaching it on the slap mill, we sort of raise one of the ends so that the belt sort of disappears out from underneath the dog and it learns to walk backwards. And of course, it's going to learn to do that in a really straight line when you teach it on the slap mill. Another thing that we use it for, sort of really non-conventionally, is in the treatment with like aggressive and dangerous dogs. Sometimes we can get a dog on here and when it's, you know, got an issue with another dog or whatever and it just like goes full steam like it wants to kill it, we sometimes put a dog on here and just let it express, like metabolize all of that energy that's within itself, get all that venom out and have no effect. Have, you know, not be able to pull the handler over, not feel that resistance of the leash and have that agitating. They get to go full steam and just make no ground. And if you've got the right kind of dog, which my Springer Spaniel used to be really helpful at doing this for me, who gives them nothing back, right? Gives them no feedback. The dog eventually, the sort of idea of chasing that other dog can go extinct. I mean, sometimes we can wear a dog out on here and then do the intro with another dog and it's going to go way better than if you just brought that amped up dog in together. So in dealing with dangerous and aggressive dogs, it can be really helpful for that. The other things I've used it for is as a crush. You know, I've had like a crush would be, you know, like how a cow or a farm animal gets veterinary treatment. They get sort of stuck into a space. We do that sometimes with dogs that are really dangerous or aggressive or have issues with the vet or, you know, vaccinations or nail trims and all kinds of stuff. You can put them into here, attach them front and back, and then they can't get to you, right? They can't maneuver. They're kind of stuck on there so that if you needed to vaccinate a dog here, his head's up there, you can get the vaccination in, no problem. So there's actually many applications of the slap mill. It's a really broad thing beyond just running. But I'll admit, there's been plenty of people, plenty of pet dog clients I've recommended that they get a slap mill because without it, they really can't fulfill their dogs, especially people who have dogs that have a level of energy that has to be expelled and their living situation doesn't allow for that. So you think people in freezing cold climates where they can't take the dog out as often as they need to, even if the dog could handle it, they potentially can't. I've recommended the slap mill and taught people how to use it with people who have quite aggressive dogs, that they really would struggle to exercise out in public. They can't let that dog run. You know, you get them to the point where they can walk their dog on leash, but they can never let their dog run and express itself in case it encounters the trigger that's going to set it off. Those kind of people do really well with the slap mill. Similarly, like I've you know, had a client once that was a disabled person that had a really high-powered dog that they needed to facilitate the exercise of, and so the slap mill allows for that. So it's a very broad tool, but what I want you to understand is that there's lots of different types of these things, and despite it often looking like a dog is being forced to run on one, they never are. So this is my one. I've had a few of these. There's another one down the back here that's like a basic model of this one, and this is the sort of more advanced one. This one's made by a company called HF Precision in Holland. I don't have any slap mill brands to recommend for you. I think that there's pros and cons to all the different things, and I don't have any relationships with any of the manufacturers beyond I've tried a lot of them, and like I say, there's pros and cons. So that's something that you would have to figure out for yourself. I've seen a lot of people who see these things and find out how much they cost. Now, this is a particularly expensive one, but in Australia, you're not going to, you know, I don't think you're going to put your hands on one for less than about $3,000, which is a huge amount of money. But it's because there's quite a lot of work involved in putting them together. So if you are a manufacturer of one of these, or you want to collaborate on putting together what I think would be the perfect one, I would love to be involved in that with someone, reach out. But let's talk about what I have got going on my slap mill. Not all slap mills come with two uprights. I really like the idea of having 2 uprights. That's why I have a second one on here that I had Fairy at HF Precision make for me. That's why it's a different color to the other one because it didn't come with it initially. Because I like the idea of the dog being attached at 2 attachment points. I like the dog to run on an X-back type harness. And then the dog is attached right at the back, but then I also have a collar here at the front that he's attached to so that he's kind of stuck. That to me just keeps the dog much safer because often when we're getting a dog to run on this thing, they're running after something, and when they either quit on going after it or they get it and stop running, the belt is still going, and I don't want the dog to get shot off the back. Of course, you can combat this by sort of putting it in the middle and using a center attached harness. That'd work fine, but I like the double uprights. The other reason I like the double uprights is like I'll do bite work on this, you know, in the past I have, where I can work the dog's grip and the dog can actually push and move forward. Like the dog can learn to drive forward in the grip because the ground can actually move from underneath the dog. So that's why I like the 2 uprights. The next thing I like to have is a brake that will stop the thing completely. So the more basic models of these don't come with a brake. This one does have a brake. It's a locking mechanism that you unscrew here and it actually pushes down in between the slats, because what I like is to be able to use this as a table. I'll use this to train all kinds of stuff, as I said, but one of the things I absolutely will teach on here is like my retrieve, my force fetch. That all happens up here on the table. Or on what looks and feels like a table but is actually a position for my dog. Because my force fetch is actually like an unforced force fetch, which we free shape. Again, if you want to learn more about that, jump in links in the description. That's something we talk about in my dog training community. So if you're on here and you're free shaping the idea of taking something, if all the dog can move is its head, then it's pretty quick before it figures out what's going on. Whereas if the dog's off the mill and it has total freedom, that free shaping can be much messier and, you know, less likely to be successful quickly. So I have the ability to lock it completely. I quite like the ability to put something into the front here. So as you can see, I've got these and I can put a bar through there and that puts a wedge. Again, sometimes I want the dog to just push into it. When we have dogs running on here, it's not uncommon for us to put something into their mouth, especially in the working dog space. I quite like a dog to just go for a trot on here as a warm up, or to just, you know, as his daily exercise, while holding a big wedge in his mouth so that it more closely simulates his actual working conditions and therefore likely increases his VO2 max, like his oxygen efficiency, because now he's got to breathe through his nose while he's actually biting. So we can teach him to do that in these low stakes conditions where we can increase his fitness that he'll use later in the work. Now, the other thing that I like about this mill is I can wind the resistance. So there's a dial just here that I can turn, and that sort of increases like a brake pad that pushes against it so that I can make it quite difficult for a dog to run or for the belt to push under certain conditions. Like if I'm training something in particular, I can do that. The other thing that this one has going on, and I have to admit they're not really functions that I ever use, is that this one can electronically incline and decline, which I never really use. And one of the features, and it's one of the reasons why I seldom would ever post video of a dog running full clip on a mill like this versus a basic one, is what's going on underneath here. So if you can see underneath here, this motor here is going to affect the incline and decline, but this one back here actually is a motor that makes the belt run, because this is designed that it can also just act as like a pacer. So I can plug it in and make it go and keep the dog running at like a jog type speed. This one's really well designed in that the belt that turns that is just very loose rubber. It's almost like a rubber band. So if the dog wants to stop, it'll just stop. You're not forcing your dog to run, but it will just keep it ticking over and you can keep the dog at a particular speed. I like that function a lot because, you know, the type of dogs I like to train are typically going to go full steam on the flat mill, which is not always what I want. Sometimes I want just to jog on there and I can set the tempo in the other ways doing that. Things that I keep on the slap mill, like I said, I like my double uprights with my X-back harness and my collar at the front. For those of you who have one, you know, people complain about slap mills all the time and say, oh, it fell apart. And I would say to people like, yeah, but when's the last time you serviced it? Because it's a machine, it has to be serviced, right? And so I keep an Allen key that fits most of the plugs on here. And intermittently, I just kind of tighten things up. When I'm using it, you might see a little bit of a wobble or something. You just tighten things up, keep it going. And the other thing that I keep handy is a pace counter, right? Like an old school hit the button counter. Because one of the ways that people will compete, if you can believe it, there's all kinds of races, there's whole leagues colleagues of people that race on these things. And GRC, which is a gameness relationship control, it's a game that I used to be heavily involved in but still support. The way that the slap mill races work is to put the dog on there, the dog's got 2 minutes to get as many revolutions as they can. So I think I've still got it on here somewhere. There's like a piece of tape here that the way that it works is they put the tape there, and every time that the belt does a revolution, we click it, and then that means that so long as we're all racing on the same slap mill, everybody is having a fair comparison at that competition. Even though we could use different slap mills at different competitions, we're each being fair at that competition by the number of revolutions, because it is a little bit variable, right? So like as you're using this slap mill and how easily the belt turns is different to other slap mills and how easily the belt turns on them. Things to be aware of if you're thinking about getting a slap mill, whichever brand you get, is they're pretty loud, right? So if you're thinking, oh, this is perfect for my apartment because I have a limited capacity to take out and exercise my dog, yep, cool, but just be aware this thing is loud. Like it will keep your neighbors up. You can't be using this late at night in your apartment. You're gonna wake everybody up. The other thing to keep in mind is like dogs will slobber, especially when they're learning to run and they go full clip on this thing. A lot of gross dog mess gets shot out the back here. So if I've ever kept this near a wall, the wall ends up with a pretty significant stain up the wall, or if it's not near a wall, you get a pretty significant slobber trail going out the back there, which is just normal when a dog is then flicking its own slobber off the back there using the slap mill. I think that's it on the slap mill. I think one of the things that I wanted to sort of educate you on is that for sure, it can look wild. When you see a dog going full clip on one of these things, it's reasonable at your first thought to be like, oh my God, that dog's being forced to do that. But the reality is, no dog's being forced to run the slap mill. It can't really do that, right? The dog only runs when it wants to, can go as fast or as slow as it likes. That's it from me. If you like this video, there's probably another one on the screen somewhere that you can check out. Or if you're interested in learning more from me, there's a link on the screen or in the description where you can jump into my serious dog business community. My shtick is that I take people from people who are interested in dog training and want to be good at it to people who are proper dog people, really understand dogs and are exceptional trainers. All right, see you on the next one.